Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. Anytime a team benches a quarterback to bring in the backup, the message is clear. The offense is stagnant and needs to change. What's being put out on the field just isn't good enough. When you're changing the most important position on the field, you're saying that the play that you're currently getting out of that position is unacceptable, and that it's time someone else gets a chance to lead the offense, because they cannot be any worse or less effective than you are right now. And sometimes, this works really well. The Rams benching Kurt Warner for Mark Bulger in 2003, and Bulger responding by making the Pro Bowl and going 12-3, leading the Rams to a first-round bye in what would turn out to be their final division title in St. Louis. The Steelers benching Cordell Stewart for Tommy Maddox in 2002, and Maddox responding by throwing 20 touchdowns and guiding the Steelers to a division title. However, sometimes this backfires in absolutely spectacular fashion. Case in point, the 1986 Seattle Seahawks. During the 1986 season, head coach Chuck Knox, in an effort to spice up the offense, decided to bench starting quarterback Dave Krieg in favor of Gale Gilbert. Not only was the end result a disaster, to the point where the already sputtering offense got worse, and not only did Knox quickly have to change his mind, but the disaster was so bad and so catastrophic that it may have cost the Seahawks a spot in the postseason. This is the story behind the worst benching in the history of the Seattle Seahawks. Before I talk about the benching in question, we need some context to understand who the starting quarterback was, and why his starting job was in jeopardy. Our story begins in 1980, when the Seahawks acquired Dave Krieg as an undrafted free agent out of Milton College, which closed its doors shortly after. Somehow, Krieg was able to work his way onto the roster, and midway through 1983, new head coach Chuck Knox, frustrated with the poor play of Jim Zorn, especially after his most recent outing against the Steelers where he went 1-for-8 with 2 yards passing and finished the game with negative net passing yards and a passer rating of 0, decided to insert Krieg into the starting lineup. This might have been the best midseason benching in the history of the franchise, because now with Krieg under center, the Seahawks started to win some games. With Krieg starting the second half of the season, the Seahawks went 5-3, as Krieg threw for 1,925 yards, 16 touchdowns, and had a passer rating of 91.5. For some perspective, if Krieg started all 16 games and played at that pace, he would have finished 8th in the league in passer rating, 5th in passing yards, and tied with Green Bay Packers quarterback Lynn Dickey for the league lead in touchdown passes. He was that good, and not only guided Seattle to their first postseason appearance in franchise history, but guided them all the way to the AFC Championship, thanks to an incredible wildcard performance against the Denver Broncos, where in a 31-7 victory, he threw 3 touchdowns and 1 incompletion, and finished the game with a perfect passer rating of 158.3. It literally does not get any better than that. With Krieg now firmly entrenched as the starter, he continued his strong play when in 1984, he made it to the first Pro Bowl of his career and threw 32 touchdowns, which was second in the league behind Dan Marino, who threw an astonishing league record at the time, 48 touchdowns. The Seahawks went 12-4 under Krieg, as they finished with their best record in franchise history and made it back to the postseason before falling at the hands of Dan Marino's Dolphins. And while Krieg alongside his team regressed a bit in 1985, thanks in part to an offensive line that could not keep Krieg upright as he took 52 sacks, he was still a really solid quarterback, finishing 7th in passing yards and 2nd in touchdown passes. Obviously, Dan Marino was the best quarterback in the AFC from 1983 to 85, but you could make an argument that Krieg might have been number 2. Krieg was looking to keep that momentum going as we headed into 1986. Unfortunately, it wouldn't quite work out that way. Things actually started off alright for the Seahawks in 1986. In one of the most convincing Week 1 wins ever, they defeated the Pittsburgh Steelers on their home field 30-0. Then followed that up with 2 more wins to start the season at 3-0 for the first time in franchise history. And over those first 3 games, while Krieg wasn't spectacular by any means, he was commanding an offense that had scored 91 points. Seattle had the 3rd best offense in the AFC and a top 5 offense in football. It was early, but it seemed like they were well on their way to making it back to the postseason for the 3rd time in 4 years. However, after a hot start, the team and the offense began to sputter. After beating the Chargers 33-7 on Monday Night Football, over Seattle's next 3 games, they scored just 40 points. And in that 3-game stretch, Krieg looked awful. Against the Raiders in a 14-10 loss, he didn't throw a touchdown pass, took 4 sacks, and finished the game with 120 net passing yards. Against the Giants, even though the Seahawks won the game, Krieg didn't look great, throwing an interception with the offense only putting up 13 first downs and 146 net passing yards. This was a far cry from the previous seasons where under Krieg, the Seahawks would be right at the top of the league in that category. But the worst one of the bunch was in Week 8, when the Seahawks took on the Denver Broncos. In a 20-13 loss, Krieg played one of the worst games of his career. He went 6 for 16, throwing for a mere 26 yards. That comes out to a mere 1.6 yards per pass attempt, and that doesn't even take into account the sacks. Krieg took 5 sacks in the game, losing 47 yards in the process. This means that when Krieg was in the game, the Seahawks had negative 21 net passing yards. I don't care if you were not even alive back then. If you're watching this video, then congratulations. On October 26, 1986, you had more net passing yards than Dave Krieg. Krieg wound up starting 175 games in his career, and this was easily the fewest number of yards he'd ever thrown for in a start. With the Seahawks at 5-3, with their season somewhat slipping away, and with Krieg and the offense sputtering, Chuck Knox knew what he had to do. It was time for Krieg to ride the pine. If the name Gale Gilbert sounds familiar to NFL historians, that's because Gilbert is the infamous answer to the always popular Super Bowl trivia question of what quarterback lost 5 straight Super Bowls. Gilbert was on the Bills when they went on their 4-year losing streak in the big game, and then joined the Chargers when they made it to Super Bowl 29 in 1994. However, back in 1986, Gilbert was a relatively unknown backup entering his second season in the NFL after entering the league as an undrafted free agent. And after a solid outing in mop-up duty against the Broncos, where he went 4 for 4 with a touchdown and a perfect passer rating, Knox was ready to give him a chance to lead the offense and start. Knox said that this was very similar to what happened 3 years ago when the team benched Jim Zorn in favor of Krieg. As Knox said, Gale Gilbert has got the job now. He doesn't have to feel like he has to do it all. We don't want him to look over his shoulder to see Dave Krieg warming up if he falters. Knox said that even though this wasn't an easy decision to make, it was necessary because the team hadn't been making plays. Krieg took the news relatively well, saying that he was going to be supportive and that it was hard, but that's the way it is. And Knox made it very clear that the offensive struggles were not all on Krieg, saying the quarterback is not totally responsible. All of us are responsible. However, Knox added that the quarterback position is crucial, and we feel a change is needed to get a catalyst to make the offense more productive. This was now going to be Gilbert's big moment. After 3 weeks of ineffective offense, including the team converting roughly 20% of their third downs, it was now Gilbert's time to shine. And he seemed like he was ready for the moment. As Gilbert said, "I feel comfortable moving the team. There's 10 great players around me." Gilbert had faith in his teammates, and rightfully so. He had Pro Bowl running back Kurt Warner. He had Pro Bowl wide receiver and one of the greatest of all time and eventual Hall of Famer Steve Largent. He had Darryl Turner, who led the league in touchdown receptions the year before, and who I did a video on a while ago, so if you want to learn more about him, then click the card in the upper right corner. It was time for Gilbert to elevate this offense. Instead, somehow, the offense got significantly worse. November 2nd, 1986. It's week 9 and the Seahawks host the Jets at the Kingdome in the first ever start for Gale Gilbert. And unfortunately for Gilbert, it was a start that he would like to forget. The Seahawks got completely torched all day long and wound up losing it 38-7. The Seahawks turned it over 3 times, only held the ball for 24 minutes, and Gilbert threw 2 picks and posted a passer rating of 64, which was more than 10 points below the league average. And with Seattle's offense only being able to muster up 7 points, it was the fewest points the team had scored all season, and was the fewest they had ever scored at home under the guidance of Chuck Knox. While Gilbert wasn't the only reason that the Seahawks were inept and lost the game, as it doesn't help when Ken O'Brien on the other side throws 4 touchdowns and finishes with a perfect passer rating of 158.3, he was definitely one of the reasons. And if that wasn't bad enough, the next week when they took on the Kansas City Chiefs, it was about to get a whole lot worse. There's no surviving footage from this game, and that's probably for the best, because this game was even uglier from an offensive standpoint than the last one. The Seahawks once again scored just 7 points. Only this time, they mustered up a mere 8 first downs. With Gilbert on the field, Seattle had 109 net passing yards, as he only completed 50% of his passes. After holding onto the ball for just over 24 minutes in their last game, they responded against the Chiefs by holding onto the ball for 23 minutes. And the back-to-back games with 7 points scored marked the first time in the franchise's decade-long history that they went back-to-back games being held to single digits. In other words, with Gilbert under center, the offense wasn't just bad like it was under Krieg. It was historically bad. And after 2 games, Chuck Knox had seen enough. After the Jets game, Knox went to bat for Gilbert, saying that he shouldn't be blamed, that he played well under the circumstances, and that the game plan they had for Gilbert went out the window in the second quarter when the Seahawks defense couldn't stop a nosebleed and made Ken O'Brien look like Joe Montana. But after the Chiefs game, or midway through it I should say, he was done, and went back to Krieg. This experiment lasted less than 2 games, as Knox realized that as bad as Krieg had been lately, it could be a whole lot worse. And this awful stretch completely derailed the team's season. With Krieg back under center, the Seahawks played well again, and ended the season on a 5-game winning streak. And Krieg played arguably the best football of his entire career. Over the final 5 games of the season, he completed over 65% of his passes, threw for 11 touchdowns and just 1 interception, and posted a passer rating of 131. The man, infamously known for taking a ton of sacks, only took 9 in that stretch as well, or less than 2 per game. However, it was not enough for the Seahawks to get into the postseason, as despite a 10-6 record, they lost out on the final wildcard spot to the Kansas City Chiefs. While Gilbert would never play another game for the Seahawks after that season, Dave Krieg went on to have a fantastic career with the team. He played with Seattle until 1991, making 2 more Pro Bowls, guiding the team to a couple of postseason appearances, and leading the league in completion percentage during the 1991 season when he completed 65.6% of his passes. He's also a member of their team's Ring of Honor. And with the exception of the 1991 season, Krieg never had a season where he had a losing record as a starter. If you want to learn more about the career of Dave Krieg, then click the card in the upper right corner. Do I blame Chuck Knox for benching Krieg? Absolutely not. With Krieg in either of those games, the Seahawks still probably don't win, and Krieg was playing so poorly beforehand that a change was probably necessary. Having said that, the fact that Knox made the change to spice up the offense, and not only did the offense get worse and regress, but the offense became historically bad by the standards of the team, is actually kind of funny in hindsight. When Knox benched Krieg for Gilbert, he was hoping that it would spark the team like it did 3 years before, and would lead the offense to being halfway decent again. Instead, it went down as the worst benching in the history of the Seattle Seahawks. Get your official Jaguar Gamer 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JRGator9, and subscribe to 60-second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.